What's up, YouTube? Your boy back once again with another sport topic, and today we're gonna talk some basketball, Orlando Magic basketball. Today I want to talk about how good is Desmond Bane really, especially since the Magic felt the need to pull the trigger on their trade the way that they did. I want to talk about how good Desmond Bane really is because people still a week later still up in arms about this trade and about the compensation and what the Orlando Magic gave up to go get Desmond Bane. Not people in Orlando, pretty much everybody outside of Orlando is still up in arms, like I said, a week later behind this trade. So I want to talk about how good Desmond Bane really is. Because we keep on talking about, oh, he's a 41% three-point shooter. He's a guy who can still defend and things like that, but he's not an all-star. And I want to actually go into like a deeper dive and actually look into some of his numbers. But so let's talk about it. As we all know, last week the Orlando Magic sent Cole Anthony, KCP, 4 picks plus a pick swap to the Memphis Grizzlies and returning guy shooting guard Desmond Bane. The first big move of the summer, and that right there, the first big domino of the fall of the summer, sent the basketball and the NBA community in a frenzy. Like they a week later, they're still talking about and they still up in arms like who the Magic think Desmond Bane is, giving up 4 picks, a pick swap, and 2 players to get Desmond Bane. If you're gonna do that, you need to go get Trae Young. You need to go get LaMelo Ball. You know, to get Darius Garland, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. Those are the type of players you make moves for. Giannis. Those are the type of move. Those are the type of players you make those type of moves for. Not a Desmond Bane. He's not even an all-star, let alone superstar. Who do the Magic think Desmond Bane is? And the funny thing about that is I don't blame like content creators. I don't blame like people who make YouTube videos or people who make Instagram videos or TikToks or Twitter posts and things like that because they're just going back off of the information that they are given, the people making the headlines. I blame the people who are, the actual insiders and the people who are actually covering the league because they know all the details and they glossing over some of these details and they giving like false information. Like, yes, technically it is 4 unprotected picks, technically, but one of those picks is in this year's draft, which is the 16th pick, which is not a lottery pick. So, okay, you can put protection on it. We already know where that pick is slotted. Like, we already know where that pick is. It's the 16th pick in this year's draft. We know what that pick is. It's not even a lottery pick. We know what that pick is. So, yeah, so technically it's unprotected, but we already know what it is. Because trust me, if that pick was a top 5 pick, then they wouldn't be getting the other 3 picks plus the pick swap. They wouldn't be getting that if we knew that that pick was a top 5 pick, a top 3 pick, a top 2 pick. If we knew that that was a lottery pick and it was high in the lottery, that would have took off some of the rest of the draft compensation. So that's kind of being false. Now, again, the 2030, the 2028, those are truly unprotected picks. And then obviously 2029 is a pick swap. 2026 next year's is a little bit kind of like because it's kind of they have a swap with Phoenix and potentially Washington, so it might not even come to like them even wanting the Magic pick, like because they're going to end up getting potential like a swap with Phoenix. More than likely, Phoenix will be a team, especially if they get rid of Kevin Durant, and also if they decide to move on Devin Booker. I don't think they'll do that, but if they happen to do that, that pick could be a very good pick. So I get you on that one. I get you on that one. But other than that, these other picks, I'm not really tripping about 2028 and 2030 because you got Desmond Bane, you got Paulo, you got Franz, you got Jalen Suggs pretty much under contract for the next 5 years. Now I know that Paulo hasn't signed his extension yet, but he's going to get an extension this summer. So you're going to have these guys under contract for up until that time. So I don't think that the Magic think that they're going to be anywhere near the lottery in any of those picks. So that's the reason why. And you got people like, Gil, him out there making the comments they make. He said he doesn't care about the picks. Only thing he keeps on talking about is the protection. And he kind of heard his own argument in the beginning of his argument because he started his argument by saying that the Magic don't care about winning. Like they just care it's a tax write off and it's Mickey Mouse and it's Disney World and all these other type of stuff. They don't really care about winning, but yet they are giving up a lot to get a player. If a team didn't care about winning, they wouldn't be doing this move to begin with. They would have just rolled with the status quo. So you actually hurt your own argument by your own initial statement by saying that they don't care about winning. Because if they didn't care about winning, they wouldn't have made this move. This is a move saying that we're ready to win. Now I get the hesitancy about at least put a top three protection on it. I don't think that maybe Memphis doesn't want, maybe Memphis wouldn't have given up Desmond Bane just for that. And yes, shout out to Windhorse by constantly telling people that hey, they're doing this, they're giving up all those picks because they want to get off of KCP's contract. It's not just all four picks is just for Desmond Bane. They also want to give off of KCP's contract. And also, people keep on being up in arms about giving up both KCP and Cole Anthony. When did KCP and Cole Anthony have all this value that you giving them up, you don't need to also give up draft picks as well? Like, when did KCP and Cole Anthony become so valuable across the league that they negate giving up of the draft picks? Like them themselves, those two players are worth all these draft picks. Hey, no, you need to just give up one draft pick if you got KCP and you're getting Cole Anthony. You only need to give up one draft pick. Like that's kind of absurd as well. Like when did they become so valuable that 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 they no longer need to give up any draft picks because of those players? Again, I like Cole Anthony a lot. I think that Cole Anthony was a glue guy, and I was hesitant a couple years ago about giving up Cole Anthony. But like I said before, as we got Paulo and as the tide started turning, everybody outside Paulo and Franz, in my opinion, on this team were expendable to make this team better. You can utilize anybody else outside those guys to make this team better. And I feel like they did that. So let's actually talk about Desmond Bane's numbers and stats, because all you've been hearing all week that he's a career 41% shooter from three. And that's great that he's able to shoot 41% from three for his career. He averages from his career. That's great. And that's something that the Orlando Magic desperately needed. We need the actual consistent 3-point shooter. We definitely needed that. But I want to do a deeper dive into the rest of his numbers throughout his career. I don't really want to talk about his rookie year too much because there's really not a lot to talk about. He was coming off the bench. He only averaged 9 points per game. Coming off the bench, he hasn't stepped into his own as an NBA player. He hasn't grown yet. So it's really not a lot to talk about. That second year, his second year in the NBA, which is this first time being a full-time starter, is really when you start to see the actual growth and progression of the player he ended up becoming to be. And the player, and you see the reason why the Orlando Magic felt the need to bring that caliber player on side of both Paulo and Franz because they feel like that's what they needed, this caliber player. So his second year in the NBA, which is his first time being the full-time starter, was in the 22 season. He averaged 18.2 points per game, averaged 2.7 assists per game, averaged 4.4 rebounds per game, shooting 46% from the floor and shooting 43% from three. His second year as a full-time starter, which is in 2023, he averaged 21.5 points per game, averaged 4.4 assists per game, averaged 5 rebounds per game, shooting 47% from the floor and shooting 40% from three. His third year as a full-time starter, which is in 2024, he averaged 23.7 points per game, averaged 5.5 assists per game, averaged 4.4 rebounds per game, shooting 46% from the floor, shooting 38% from three. Last year, which is his final year with Memphis, averaging 19.2 points per game, averaging 5.3 assists per game, averaging 6.1 rebounds per game, shooting 48%, which is his best shooting percentage, shooting 48% from the floor, and then also shooting 39% from three. So he brought his percentage up from three slightly a little bit up. His shooting percentage from the floor is his career high. He's a career 47% shooter from the floor. Like we all know, his career is shooting 41% from three now. His first year as a starter, the 2022 season, was his best year shooting from three. He shot 43%, and he's gone down from 40 to 38, then brought it back up last year to 39. A guy who actually shoots a lot of shots and a lot of threes per game. Career, he averages for his career shooting 13.8 shots per game, shooting 6.3 threes per game, and careerly makes 7.1 shots per game and right around three points a game. Not quite 3 points, like around like 2.9, 2.8 career threes per game after shooting 6.3s per game. So he's a guy who takes a lot of shots, and makes a lot of shots as well. Again, so it's not a guy who has a high shooting percentage, but he only shoots like 5 shots a game. Like a guy can shoot, be a 50% 3 point shooter, but he only shoots 2 3 point games. So he makes one and misses one. That's really not a good indicator if he's an actual good 3 point shooter. He's only taking 2 shots a game and he's just shooting at 50%. So when you do something like that, like when that shooting percentage is that high, you want to see, does he actually make and actually take a lot of shots? Is he taking a lot of shots? So is that really a good number? So him shooting a little over 6 threes a game and then making almost around 3 points per game average for his career, him shooting 41% kind of checks off the, hey, he's a guy who constantly shoots the ball. So you're gonna see a guy who's going to get a lot of shots up. And in Memphis, they depended on him a lot because we all know that Ja missed a lot of time for all different type of reasons. If it was suspension, if it was injuries, so a lot of those times Memphis was depending on him to being the primary scorer. That's where you have the averaging 23 and averaging 25 per game. So you see a lot of responsibilities on him. And I do think that, some of that percentages going up and down the way it did is because of the team building and depending on him a lot. That's not going to be the case here in Orlando because you have both Paolo and you have Franz. So to take some of that pressure off, that he can kind of slide in and be, the third star behind Paolo and Franz. I brought this up on my video last week that he could possibly be this year's and this generation's version of 3D Dennis Scott, a guy that when you had Shaq, you had Penny, you even had Nick Anderson, take away all the attention. And when they was crashing their paint, hey, 3D was able to go behind that perimeter and let them threes fly. But somebody also brought up Rashard Lewis, and it's also kind of similar. And Rashard Lewis was a All-Star in Seattle, was able to get brought over to the Orlando Magic in 2007. A lot of people thought that the Orlando Magic overpaid for Rashard Lewis. And then 2 years later, Rashard Lewis makes an all-star with the Orlando Magic in 2009. And the Orlando Magic go to the NBA Finals that year as well. So 2 years by being in the Orlando Magic, he ended up going to the NBA Finals and also being an all-star. So that deal, that move worked out and panned out tremendously for the Orlando Magic and for Rashard Lewis. And I sit back and look because the guy, people keep talking about that he hasn't made an All Star. And you look at these numbers, you're like, how he didn't make an All Star? Well, he is in the West, and there's a lot of shooting guards out there. There's a lot of people out there that got names and stuff like that. And we all know that some of these, All Stars become, popularity contests. And if you're not marketed the way you should be marketed, and I'm gonna talk about that. I'm gonna do a video about Paulo about him not being marketed the way he should be. When you talk about stuff like that, that might be part of the reason why he doesn't get in the All-Star bid. Now he's going to be in the East. And I do think that this move, them acquiring him the way that they did, I do think that kind of puts a spotlight on the Magic and also put a spotlight on Bane. But I actually look at it and think that, hey, this guy really, not only, I know people keep saying he's a perfect fit, I don't think people realize exactly how much of a perfect fit he really is for the Magic. Was the name that we brought up a lot, or if any, people mostly was bringing up point guards. Me included. I thought the Magic, and still do think the Magic desperately need a point guard, somebody to actually run the offense to facilitate. He's a guy who can facilitate. They asked him in Memphis because of Ja not being there for whatever reason. Ja wasn't there. Different reasons throughout the years. They asked him to be a primary ball handler. They asked him to facilitate. He actually had those responsibilities. So, do I think he's going to be a primary ball handler here in Orlando? Absolutely not. I do think that this move does put even more responsibility on Jalen Suggs. But if they need him to make plays for people and get other people involved, he has the capability of doing that. You don't lose defense. Like if you would have had to move on from Jalen Suggs and brought in a Trae Young, you would have lost some of your defense to do that. You're not losing any of your defense. If anything, I feel like if your defense is not staying the same, which is the Orlando Magic superpower, your defense might have gotten even better because now you don't have to hide anybody. You have somebody on the floor that actually can play defense, a guy who can catch and shoot, and also who can set up and create for somebody else as well. So it is a perfect fit. Now, some of the irony is that I know a lot of Magic fans did not want Trae Young. And a lot of people kept on saying because we need somebody that's not going to take the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hand and take Sean away from Paolo and Franz and things like that. And I think because they were afraid of, if Trae Young gets here, at the very least, Trae Young is the 2 star. I mean, I think that Paolo's still the better player on this team, even with Trae Young being here. I still think that Paolo would have been the best player on the team and been the number 1 option. Trae probably would have been the number 2 option and leapfrog Franz. This move, initially, you look at, your 1 and 2 is definitely Paolo and Franz, and then Bane and Suggs are battling for 3 and 4. And that could ultimately still be true. But when you look at what he was doing out there in Memphis, and you look at the type of responsibilities he's probably going to have here in Orlando, there's a good chance that Desmond Bane can actually be the 2nd star behind Paolo. There's a real good chance. I seen somebody do like a 2K simulation, and I think the 2K simulation ended up having Desmond Bane being the primary, like the leading scorer. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that when you have a 25 point scorer in Paulo, and then also you have a 24-point scorer in France as well, that those guys are pretty much your 2 primary scorers. But I wouldn't be surprised if bringing in Desmond Bane lowers Franz a little bit, and he kind of comes up, and now they're at neck and neck, and now they're both like around 21, 22 points a game, which again, even if Franz drops from 24 and drops down to 22, and Paulo still stays at 25, you have a 25 point score, and you have 22, 21s. That's still better than Paulo being 25 and Franz being 24. If you have 2 guys that are legitimately 20 plus scores a game, even if that brings down Franz some, and you elevate and you jump up Desmond Bane, because we've seen that he's capable of doing it. And the guy who can score at a high clip, a guy who can get a 50-point game, a 44-point game, things like that, things he's done out there in Memphis, a guy who's a career 47% free throw, 40% shooter from the floor, 41 from 3, 47% from the floor, and the guy who averages taking a lot of shots. Because that's something that the Magic don't do. You know, the Magic are 30th in 3-point attempts. They average making 11 threes per game. They're 30th in 3 points made, dead last in 3-pointers made, averaging 11 per game. Desmond Bane gets you 3 by himself. Like, Desmond Bane literally gets you 3 by himself. So I could imagine that leaps the Magic next year from the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the bottom of all these offensive categories. And I do think, I'm not saying that Desmond Bane puts them and catapults them into the top 10, but I do think he gets them to league average. He gets them around that 16, 17, 16, 15, 14 range. And with this Magic defense, I believe that the Magic will be a top 3 team in the East because of that. I know that's been the speculation. The people been going back and forth debates, and people still, even though Boston has an injury with JT, we don't know what Cleveland's going to do. Obviously, Indiana's still in the finals. I mean, Game 7's tonight. Like, we see all that. But I think a lot of times, I think people really focus on the logos and the names associated to these logos, and not actually really looking into these teams, because I don't think that Boston is going to be a top, unless Jason Tatum comes back quicker. I don't think that Boston is going to end off this season like as a top 4 team in the East. I don't, because of Jason Tatum. And the same thing with Cleveland, because we don't know when Darius Garland is going to come back and how he's going to play when he comes back, and if they decide to move on from Darius Garland, because I do think Cleveland wants to blow it up. I do think that they want to blow it up. They might not be able to because of the Darius Garland injury, and they don't know the timetable when he's going to be back. So they might not blow it up until the trade deadline, and then even still, they might just roll with it. So we'll see exactly what Cleveland's going to do. But I do think the addition of Desmond Bane does elevate the Orlando Magic into that conversation. I think the Orlando Magic going in last year should have been a top four team, and I think they would have been a top four team if Paulo and Franz played, and Paulo Franz and Suggs played the majority of the season. If they don't miss early on and Suggs doesn't miss later on, I do believe that they would have been a top four team in the East. So I do think bringing in a player like Desmond Bane, I do believe that this elevates them because they don't lose anything on defense and they gain a lot on offense. I understand this one player, but come on, let's be real. We know that this is basketball. This ain't football. Where one play in football doesn't matter. You unless it's a quarterback, one play in football doesn't matter. One play in basketball does, especially something that is desperately needed, like shooting for the Orlando Magic, something like offense, and he doesn't give you any, he doesn't give up anything on defense. It'd been different if he gave up something on defense. If he gave up something on defense, then I'd probably be, I'll be on more lines like, okay, he gives up something on defense. He gives up something on defense, but because he doesn't give up anything on defense, he gives you so much on offense. I believe that this helps out the Orlando Magic a lot, and I do believe that Desmond Bane has the possibility and the capability of being the two star. I don't think he. I think it's still going to be Paulo and Franz, but I wouldn't be shocked looking at these numbers and looking at the type of scorer that he is. A guy who can shoot mid range, shoot threes, and get to the cup. I think that he's a guy that can provide a lot for this Orlando Magic offense. And I do believe that he really is that good. And I'm willing to say I wouldn't be surprised if the Magic had 3 All-Stars next year and 2 potential all NBA players. I think Paul is going to be an all NBA player. I wouldn't be surprised if Franz is flirting with that third team all NBA, and I wouldn't be surprised if Paulo, Franz, and Bane, all 3 of them are going to be all stars. That wouldn't surprise me at all. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Actually, I would think that that's something that is trending towards happening. Is that all 3 of these guys being all stars? Like, subscribe, if you haven't, comment below if you haven't clicked that bell, get more videos. I'll holler.